want to tell you that I could give an amazing introduction for this next individual. But after seeing this one particular video, knowing that a picture is worth 1,000 words, this video sets up our next speaker perfectly. So if we can please roll the introduction, this will set up the next moment.
Writing book copies. I'm working on my second book, Vision Habits Love, and now I'm traveling the nation speaking. I was born with a life-threatening genetic condition known as cystic fibrosis. It fills my lungs with a thick, sticky, infected mucus that I can't cough out. I usually spend about 100 to 180 days a year in the hospital, and it's really made me appreciate every moment. Because even though we all could get hit by a bus tomorrow, my tomorrow feels a little like it may not happen. I didn't really set out to do everything I'm doing, it just kind of organically happened. I am the CEO and founder of a company called Landmark Makers. It's a nationwide recruitment services firm. I wrote a book, and that book came out, I think, October 2016, and it became a bestseller, so that was cool, and launched a national speaking tour. I believe that one of the biggest things holding entrepreneurs, CEOs, C-level executives back is they're not reaching their fullest potential. So when I walk into a room and it is my job that day to give an inspiring speech that helps people realize their potential and want to live up to it, I know that the reason I was put onto this planet is justified. Cystic fibrosis has taught me the power of having a vision. But perhaps most of all, this disease has taught me the power of how to give and receive unconditional, authentic love.
EO, give some love for Klyn Elsbury!
I still remember hearing her family sobbing. The machines going off, and the doctors calmly yet authoritatively giving the nurses the orders on what to do with her body. And I was reminded of a poem I once wrote that began, "A disease is simply death, sprinkled with a sliver of hope." An automatically failed test titled "Learning How to Cope." Let me ask you some questions. Raise your hand. How many of you have a dream? How many of you have had that dream for a month? 5 months, a year, keep your hands up. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. How many of you have had a dream for 20 years or more? And if you're being completely honest now, how many of you haven't really been working towards it? Yeah, I see that hand. Fill in your blank. One day I'm going to... So I was born, as you know, with a life-threatening genetic condition known as cystic fibrosis. It does fill my lungs with a thick, sticky, infected mucus that I can't cough out. It has destroyed my pancreas. And in 2001, I slipped into a diabetic coma for 1 month where the doctors told my family not only to make end-of-life arrangements, but if I wake up, prepare to have your daughter permanently brain dead. Fast forward to today, I still spend a third to half of my year in the hospitals. I take 30 plus medications every day just to digest food. That's it, just to eat food. I have to take that much. Thanks to my diabetic coma, I'm now full-fledged diabetic, and I manage that up to 5 times a day with insulin injections. Frankly, I've taken more drugs than Charlie Sheen, and I've never been high. It's interesting. You really think about all the things this disease has done for you. You think about the things that you don't particularly like. I remember when I was a kid, and I'd be walking up and down the halls of the hospitals. You have your IV poles, right? So picture this. IV pole, there's those 45-pound weights you see at the gym, the plates, and they would put that on to like station us because we'd slide down the halls and we'd shoot the saline syringes at the nurses at their station. And one day I go to do this, and the nurse, not a well-mannered nurse by any means, she looks up at me and she goes, "Klyn, what are you going to do when you get older?" because I had this way of getting all the kids around me to do the same thing, and they loved it. And I looked at her and I go, kids like me don't grow up. We die, like Heather did. And I'll never forget the look that washed over her face. You know, this year, it's still weird to say out loud. I'm one of the oldest and fittest people in the world with my mutation. And this year, I will turn 31 years old. After being told every single year I may not make it to see the next. And I wrote the book. And now I get to travel the world speaking, and I get to go to companies, and I get to teach them the life lessons I've learned from inside the hospital with the hopes that it will empower executives and their leadership team to go back or to talk with their employees in a new way to ultimately help the company. And I know on one hand, hospital life probably has very little to do with business life. If you truly think about it, the parallels are striking. So I'm going to take you back to January 2017, when I was on day 29 of IV antibiotics. This was the third time in 20 minutes my IV pole beeped suddenly, alerting me that there's air in the tubes connected to my port. I glanced at the clock. 2:32 a.m. You would think that hospitals are a place to rest, relax, recover, sleep in. No, not all. Because during the day, there's a certain amount of staff members coming into and out of your room, giving you all kinds of medications. And at night, there's a different set of staff members walking into and out of your room, testing how those medications are responding in your body. In the last 12 hours, I have had 42 pills, 12 antibiotics, 5 insulin injections, and a continuous strips of IV antibiotics, all in an attempt to destroy the latest bacteria in my lungs that is starting to slowly try to murder me. And the thing is I know I could page that nurse. Just one little button, call button. Have her come to my room, she'll fix my noisy IV pole. But the reality is we would probably spend until 5 a.m. chatting about everything that's happened in the 2 months since I've seen her last. So I said to get out of my own bed, walk over to my pole, and I silence the mind-numbingly loud machine for so long. And I gently flick the air bubbles back up from my port to the bag where they belong. Despite the glow from the machine, the room is pretty dark. And there's an eerie silence, except for the random code blues, which in a twisted way reminds me to be thankful that my cheeks still have that rosy pink color to them. So I glanced around, and for the first time in a while, I really relished in my thankfulness to have such vitality still, after being told for 29 years that next year might not happen. I have my blanket from home, my lucky teddy bear to keep me company, and I have a stack of my books in the corner, and I have to autograph them for the doctors. I want to buy them, which is pretty cool. And then I have my work laptop charging. But on the shelf are 2 dozen roses that the love of my life dropped off yesterday to serve as a reminder that all I really need to be doing while I'm in here is focusing on outliving them. And I've learned it doesn't matter if you're running a company, a team, or an IV drip bag. When you love your life and the people and things you choose to fill it with, you quit capitalizing on only the good stuff, because the bad stuff is still a reminder that there is air in your lungs and a rosy pink color to your cheeks. You know, one of the things I like to do when I'm walking or when I'm in the hospital is I like to go for late night walks. There's that tranquility in the halls, it's very quiet. You get to truly take a minute to think about everything that's going on, everything that you want to experience, the vision you have for your life. And so I get ready to go, I decide to unhook myself from the machine. It's super easy when you've done it a billion times. And I put on a sweater because it hides the port and it hides the needle protruding out of the port. And for me, it was always a personal decision to never look like a patient when you're in the hospital. So I peek out my door, make sure that the nurses aren't at their guard stations, and I sneak out into the hallway. It's go time. So I strolled to the back corner stairwell that the security guard showed me during my last visit, and as I do, I walk past room 211. You see, 211 is a really good friend of mine today. She has cystic fibrosis too. And for those of you who don't know much about cystic fibrosis, most people die in their early 20s still today. All kinds of great research is being done, but 31 is ancient. And walk past and she's so freaking cute. You guys know these people. She's just always smiling, and she's got like this wispy blonde hair, and she's got her nasal cannula in, and she's always laughing no matter what happens. And what's funny is when you laugh with cystic fibrosis, you cough because you don't have the lung function to be able to laugh. And it amazes me how she keeps finding every reason to smile. But we do occasionally have serious conversations, and one of the nights we were talking about Nelson Mandela and what he went through in prison. You know, isn't it all relatable to what we go through inside these walls? You know, was he thankful every time he got to see the guards because it was a sign for human interaction? And we like to think about some of the experience we've had that shaped our reality and shaped our outlook and shaped the reason we are who we are and how we're able to smile. And I tell the story, I was 17, and at 17 years old, it's a rite of passage to go to prom. But unfortunately, I had a date. He was a senior. It was pretty great. So I was cool. And getting ready for prom, and then I get hospitalized. My date broke up with me. That sucked. And I was telling her this story. So we're in the hospital, and I remembered getting all these messages from my girlfriends. And they were at the store, and they were picking out their prom dresses. And some of them couldn't decide if they wanted a sweetheart neckline or an A-line, and how they wanted it all to work, what color to choose. And I was so freaking jealous that was the choice they got to make that day, because the choice I had to make was if I wanted my anti-nausea meds with breakfast or with lunch. If I thought I could physically get through the morning without throwing everything up. And I didn't understand why they got to pick out prom dresses. And I got to pick out what time I wanted my medications. The mom was in the room. She goes, honey, have as big of a pity party as you want. You're entitled to do that. Nobody will fault you for that. She goes, but you have half hour. Half hour. So she leaves the room, and I do the things 17-year-old girls do. I cry, I hate my fucking life. Nothing makes sense. I'm emotional. It's not fair. And then exactly 30 minutes later, you know what she does? She comes into my hospital room with a wheelchair. She goes, get in. I do. She listens to your mother when she says, get in. And she rolls me up to, of all places, the 7th floor burn unit. She makes me smell the decaying flesh. She makes me talk to a lot of the women who lost most of their bodies to fire. And I met a girl that day who was tied to her bedpost by her ex-boyfriend, raped and left for dead while he set the house on fire. And in that moment, I learned to be grateful for everything I had and everything I would ever have. Because in talking to her, I saw that there are certain truths behind people that make them who they are versus coward or relish in that self-pity or fuel themselves off of that self-pity. And I learned how to control what's happening here, not inside me. And my friend and I were talking about this, and we realized it doesn't matter what happens in those 4 walls, because it's only our interpretation of what's going on that's actually going on. And for 2 girls who are always short of breath, we sure do talk a lot. But it's not easy being wheezy, so we'll get to that later. I set a phone reminder to go off by 3:30 a.m., so I'm back for my next round of IVs. And as I do, I can't help but reflect on where I was in 2013. I was 25 years old at the time, and I was dedicating 12-hour days to starting up the West Coast division of a Boston-based biotech and pharmaceutical recruitment firm. And that year, I was spending more time in the hospitals than I was in the apartment I could barely afford. And sure, I had dreams. I wanted to write a book, maybe start a company maybe one day, start dating, find love, do all the things you're supposed to do. But I couldn't focus on my dreams because I was too busy working to build the dreams of somebody else. And I was putting things like exercise and eating clean, healthy meals on the back burner in favor of hitting the drive-thru on my way home, pound down extra 10 sales calls, in the hopes that I would land that one commission check to land that one client, to find a candidate for that client, to get another commission check, to pay some of my bills. And what I didn't realize was I was going nowhere. So rather than call another client that night, I decided to call a really good friend of mine. She's an attorney, super, super successful. She has her own business, and she's happily married, has some kids, and she's one of the oldest people I've ever met with cystic fibrosis. I think she was 35 at the time. And as we exchanged a few minutes of small talk, I could feel that all too familiar tickle in my lungs. And suddenly, I started uncontrollably coughing. And I've got the cheeseburger, I'm driving it, and here's the tickle. And all of a sudden, I put my hand in front of my face to guard the steering wheel because I know it's coming. I'm going to cough so hard that there's going to be mucus everywhere, and it's disgusting to clean up. And I look down, and it's not mucus anymore, and it's straight blood. And I hear her voice. And she goes, "Klyn, you're literally working yourself to death. What is so important about working for these guys that you're willing to risk your life to build their dreams?" And to be fair, my first thought was that I needed to immediately rush to the ER. But my second thought was about how I had bills to pay and my health had to wait. And so I go, you don't get it. Because I can't admit that she's actually onto something, right? And so I'm like, you don't get it. And I reach inside my to-go box for napkins, I'm cleaning everything up, and I'm like, I'm so close. I'm so close. All I want to do now is I want to get off the phone with you. I want to go to bed. I want to wake up the next day and repeat that pattern. I want to cash my commission checks, put gas in my car, to then go find a client, to then go get a candidate to match that client, to get another commission check, not really caring about either. What I didn't realize is that I was in a downward spiral that was going to cost me my life. And she goes, "Klyn," trying to calm me. "Some of us spend our entire lives doing some things we don't like doing in order to keep on doing what we don't like doing. And that's called stress. When you work hard at something you hate, it's called stress. When you work hard at something you love, that's called passion. Your stress is killing you. I know you're right, but you just don't understand. It's timing. I just need like 3-4 more paychecks. Here's the deal, Beth. Here's what I'm gonna do. Timing sucks. 3-4 more paychecks. That's it. That's all I need. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll quit my job because now I have money, right? So I'm gonna quit my job, and maybe then I'll work on my own stuff and I'll build my dreams. Maybe I'll write the book. Maybe I'll start dating and stuff. But the timing, I can't get to it yet. You don't understand. And her voice says, "Klyn, people always wait. They're gonna wait for the holidays to get over with. And then of course it's spring break, so it's time to vacation. And before you know it, it's summer and another year has passed, and the only thing that's happened is you've gotten older. The only thing right now you are going to be waiting for is a call from my office on how to draft your will. I love you, but do you even love yourself right now?" And with that, she hung up on me. And I was pissed. But I was filled with the realization that she was right. So I drive to the ER, and I check myself in, and I do the initial test, and I find out that my lung function at that time was a dangerously low 38%. And unless I was lucky enough to get a lung transplant, the odds of me surviving to see my 29th birthday were pretty close to impossible. And from my work laptop that night, I emailed a resignation letter to 2 CEOs that to this day have still not responded. But they did like one of my YouTube videos, so we're good now, okay? And I was fueled by the realization that I'd rather have a short life, full of things that I love, than a long life spent in a miserable way. And so with only a few $100s to my name, I started thinking. I thought about the company I wanted to create, the book I wanted to write, the qualities of a significant other that I wanted to meet. And I realized it doesn't matter. If you're letting an oxygen mask do the heavy breathing for you, or if you're facing a major executive decision, to get out of a rut, you must be flexible on your methods, but laser focused on your vision. And I knew my decision wasn't going to be easy. Not a chance. Because the company I needed to work for didn't exist. I physically had to create it. There was nobody else like me doing what I wanted to do. And I remember 2 quotes. J.K. Rowling had once said that rock bottom was the foundation for which she built her life. And additionally, Jim Brown said, motivation's what gets you started, but habit is what keeps you going. So So I glance back down at my phone, and I see a text message from my boyfriend that comes in, and he goes, "Baby, I miss you. Our home feels more like an apartment than a home right now." So when I first met this guy, he was what I call like the George Clooney of San Diego, right? Like he's too cool for a girlfriend because he's got 100 of them. And he's got the boat, he's a big successful CEO, everything was perfect. And after a few dates, we met online. After a few dates, he Googled me. Just not what you want to do. And he saw some of my speaking about cystic fibrosis and terminal illness and death. And it gave him his why. For the first time in his life, he understood his why. And suddenly he realized that the trajectory he was on was not the trajectory he wanted to be on. You know, and in that moment, we have spent almost every day together ever since. It's really interesting because shortly after the Google episode, he asked me to move in. And if I'm being completely honest, what I mean by move in is I started, ladies, you know what I'm talking about. You don't have to admit out loud. We start strategically leaving bobby pins all over their house. Then, oops, the toothbrush is left. Not maybe the hairbrush, because you know you spend the night so often. And suddenly, before you know it, all your stuff's at their house instead of yours. And they're like, "Yeah, I'd love for you to move in." You're like, "Yes, I would." So I moved in. He asked, of course. And you know, it's funny. He now helps me pack that very same book bag I used to reserve for taking things to his place and leaving them there. For weekends at his place, for now weeks at the hospital. And now he's fearful. Because he doesn't know if this is the hospitalization where the one girl he ever loved leaves through the morgue instead of the entrance. And reassuring loved ones that they won't have to bury me soon is a speech that I have practiced over and over while walking hospital hallways my entire life. Because I have lost more friends to this disease than I care to count. And I remember meeting Jake when I was 13, 14 years old. He was about 6 or 7, little boy. And at the time, at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics, we'd always go downstairs in the basement, which is weird because the basement's kind of by the morgue. Whatever. And we'd always go to the basement at 2 p.m. for our daily workouts. And I had my treadmill, and Jake had his treadmill, so you run, right? And so interesting is we would always compete to see who could run farther or fastest. And what basically competition meant is we would run so hard until one of us wound up puking. That was a sign that we got the mucus out for the day. We were pretty exhausted. We could go back to our room and chill out. And we treated it like a game. Like, you will not outrun me. We talked a lot of crap to each other. Such a fun kid. And one day, he comes in, and he's wearing an oxygen mask. And in between trying to walk at this point and coughing up mucus, he looks at me and he goes, "One day, I'm going to run like you can." And Jake was put on a ventilator that night and died that weekend. And I've always wondered, why are we not taking the time to cherish our loved ones? To connect? Why are we always waiting for funerals to tell people what they mean to us? To make a difference in someone's life? Because I feel like we are always waiting for something. To quit that job, to scale that company, to tell that person what they mean to us. And what if we were in a world where we stopped waiting for everything to be better, and we started appreciating life for as it is right now, not as it should be one day? You know, one thing nobody tells you is that statistically more people die in hospitals than in their own homes. Statistically, these deaths occur between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Statistically, my family will be at my funeral very soon. But there's a power in being able to walk the halls of a hospital at the right place and time that pretty much guarantees my exit to that morgue. And there's a power right now in every breath. Because I'm choosing to be too busy experiencing life to worry about death. And it doesn't matter if you're walking the halls of a hospital at 3 a.m. or you're walking into a boardroom to defy the odds, you are choosing your power. And it doesn't matter if you're wondering if you can survive the night or the next market crash, because there is a way to turn every setback into a comeback, every trial into a triumph. Because the thing is, again, it is only our interpretation of what is going on that is actually going on. And in the midst of my thoughts, doctors and nurses rushed past me in a frenzied run. The light in the hallways auto-adjusts to accommodate, and speakers boom through the silence. Code blue, attention staff in 2 West. There's a code blue in room 211. You know, I knew she was a lot more critical than I was, but I didn't know my last conversation with her would have been my last conversation with her. She was sitting up in her bed, the oxygen mask aiding her as she spoke. She was so happy. She was so happy. And she couldn't laugh like everybody else, but yet she still laughed. She appreciated every moment, every memory, every breath. And as I walk back to my room, I can hear her family sobbing, the machines going off, and the doctors calmly yet authoritatively giving the nurses the orders on what to do with her body. You know, I read a quote once about how if we could physically manifest our problems into objects, right? Problems, yeah, we've all got them. If you don't know yours, ask your neighbor, they'll tell you. Into objects. We put these objects in the middle of the room so we can see everybody else's problems. We quickly reach back to grab ours so we wouldn't be stuck with anybody else's. And in times like this, I can't help but wonder, did I really pick this disease? The more I think about that question, the stronger my response seems to get. I would never wish this disease on anybody. But somehow, in a world of infinite possibilities, I am happy that this disease picked me to murder. And in the most twisted way, I get it. I get why she was laughing until her last breath. I get why Jake was so fun. So we're going to go back to the original questions that I asked you about your dreams. You see, I started studying happiness and fulfillment within those walls. Why are some people okay with what's happening to them? Why are some people depressed about it? And why do some people wind up like John O'Leary? You know, and I'm going to explain to you some of the research that I've covered. And this research, it is powerful on its own. But when you take what I say and you actually implement it and you hold yourself accountable, it will dramatically transform your life. Question time, let's have fun with this. Okay. How many Americans, percentage-wise, what percentage of Americans, when polled by a recent Harris poll, consider themselves happy? Throw it out, let me hear it. What percentage of Americans consider themselves happy? 20%. Wow, you guys are depressed earth. You're kidding me? Okay, so let me get this straight. So you said 30, right, sir? Okay, so you said 30. So that means, do you consider yourself happy?
Joyful.
Joyful. Okay, so that means, unfortunately, that the person to your right and left don't consider themselves joyful. And he's exactly right. 33% of Americans living in the United States of America do not consider themselves happy. 67%, the majority, consider themselves unhappy. So, if we look at psychology and we look at science, what can we do about that? What can we personally do about that? So there's 4 main principles to happiness. Perceived control, perceived progress, connectedness, and a vision or meaning. Perceived control. So in 1978, a bunch of really smart people got together, and they started studying lottery winners and paraquadriplegics. Interesting combination, I'll give it that. And what they would do is they would track their relational happiness levels on a chart before they won the lottery, after they won the lottery, about 6 months before and afterwards. There were 22 people in the lottery winning group, okay, who won the lottery. 22 people win the lottery. Yay, I'm rich. Then they got 22 people, didn't win anything. Yay, I'm the same. Then they have quadriplegics, and these people, it was a sudden thing. They didn't know it was going to happen. There was no life-threatening, debilitating illness, and then they lost their limbs or their ability to move. It just sudden accident. And they tracked all these happiness levels, and what they found was that 6 months after that, they returned to the same levels of happiness that they were going into the event. The lottery winners did not wind up any happier than what they were expected to be. And the paraquadriplegics didn't wind up as unhappy as researchers expected it to be. And it makes me think a lot about our default emotional settings. You have patterns throughout your entire life, behavioral patterns that shape how your perception is of the world despite what could happen to you. And what was fascinating about this is Jake and my friend were onto this. John O'Leary is onto this. They get it. And if you go back in history and you really look at some of the text from ancient times, you'd find that Epicurean philosophers and Greek philosophers, they were all onto this. Because it's only our interpretation of what is going on that is actually going on. And if you understand your default, you can get through anything. There's a concept called the crucible. And I was explaining it to a couple of you earlier. So the crucible, okay? A crucible is a sudden or life-changing event. You're not expecting it, it just kind of happens. And it's usually a very impactful one that shapes the trajectory of your entire life. And there's three things people commonly do in crucibles. The first thing that they tend to do is they get depressed, they get sad, they are not able to bounce back, and that becomes the trajectory of their life. They're in that downward spiral I talked about, but it doesn't lead anywhere and they can't pull themselves out. Second thing they tend to do is they go with the next best option. So if they lose their company and they're looking around, they get a job as a CEO, maybe they just decide, you know what, retirement's good, even though that's the thing they want, even though they want to scale their company, they want to do that, they find some excuse, they're not sure what to do with it, so they do the next best thing that they can do. And then the third option is they get bad. They get down on themselves, they hate their life, nothing makes sense. They spend a couple months, maybe a couple years in this self-pity, doom and gloom, and then they have a switch go off in their brain, and it pushes them through to a life that they never thought possible. Perceived control. When you are at your crucible, you will have three options, and you can pick your options just like you pick out your clothes every day. And at first, it's going to be awkward. I'm going to share that with you. It's going to be very awkward when stuff happens that you don't want to happen, and you have that emotional gut reaction. You can physically train your brain to get out of that gut and into the choosing of what you want your life to be like. Because it doesn't matter if you're wondering if you can survive the night or the next market crash. Again, there is a way to turn every setback into a comeback, every trial into a triumph. Perceive progress. Remember that blank? Fill in the blank. One day, I'm going to do what you want despite adversity. Do what you want because of adversity. Let me tell you a secret, guys. You're never going to get any younger. There is no time like the present to start on that thing you've been wanting to work on. It's never going to get easier than it is right now today. You already have everything you need to go after that goal. It's not a matter of resources, it's a matter of how resourceful you are. Every single thing that you need in your life to get to where you want to go, you have already. Do not wait another day. You are aging now, not in the future. This means don't wait for the weather to get better. Don't wait for the kids to get older. Don't wait to be healthy. For goodness sakes, you do not, this is my thing, you do not need to be healthy to go after your goals. If I waited until I was healthy, I would not be here today. I would not have a book. I would not have a company. I would not be helping other entrepreneurs. Because I am very well aware that my time is very limited. And I am very well aware that there will be corporate meetings that I fly to where I need to check into the hospital and bring my IV pole with me. You do not need to wait for anything to go after here one day. You do not need permission from anybody. You go. And think to yourself, why not now? What is holding you back? And whatever answer comes to your mind, with love, with the deepest sense of love I can give you, whatever answer that just stopped you from your why not now is total bullshit. People think they need to be motivated to start to act, right? You know, let me get on Pinterest, let me get on Instagram, let me just talk to somebody inspiring, and then I'll be able to act and I can go for it. You know what makes you go for it? Going for it. And then the motivation comes because you start to get the momentum that Darren Hardy wrote about in the compound effect. Act, motivation follows. It is not the other way around. Third, connectedness. I believe that hospital hallways have seen more sincere kisses than wedding chapels. I believe that they have heard more heartfelt prayers than churches. And I really think it's because we're a community, we are like a well-functioning company. We all have our values, we all have our mission statements, we all have our goals, and it comes down to get out alive. And we know that in the worst times, when chaos happens, when stuff is going down, nothing matters but the goal of getting out alive. Because we all believe in the same truths. And it doesn't matter. Ego, there's no place for ego in a hospital. There's no place for, well, yeah, but she didn't really do that right. No. If she messes up, it's okay. She messes up. They'll fix that on their own because they don't want to mess up, because the chances of messing up is life and death for somebody. It's about continuous improvement, love, and compassion for the other person. Whether it's a nurse, a doctor, or your friends. And the best memories of my life have been experienced that collective joy when everybody wins, when a patient gets to go home. Because we are all continuously rooting for each other, like a well-functioning company should be. And we know what really matters. We know that our real I love yous come from leaving the office a few hours earlier sometimes to go home and play with your kids, to treat your spouse better than the highest paying client, from the way you hold a nurse's hand while the phlebotomist struggles to find a vein, for the head nod in the hall the next day that conveys, I appreciate you, for letting my family grieve loudly in the middle of the night when my daughter was wheeled to the morgue. What would happen to your company if you started intentionally hiring people with this set of connectedness and values and facilitated a culture where no matter what the market was doing, everybody's acting out of the same culture of love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness? How can the company win so everybody can celebrate? How can that be built into the core philosophies of everyday actions? It's about the small moments of appreciation and taking time to value somebody for what they are. Not who you want them to be, what they are right now, while you shape and mold them to reach their fullest potential. One of the companies I consult for found that the guy, it's really interesting, promising entrepreneur, about 15 million in revenue, and he had reached that critical mass point where it's too hard for him to be 100% in control of his business, right? So he's got to delegate quite a bit, and he doesn't know what to do, and he feels like things are falling apart. And he calls me in, and I come out there, and I get to talk to some of the employees, and I find, yeah, they're a pretty connected group, but they're not connecting. When a new employee starts, we looked at the recruiting process first, and when the new employee starts, they had all the working technology, they stop by, hi, how you doing, welcome to the team. That's nothing anymore. Absolutely nothing. And what they did then is we came up with this idea of a scavenger hunt. You want to meet the most tenured person, somebody who's been at the company the longest. You want to meet somebody with their rags to riches story. There's a company where one of the regional managers started off as a janitor, and she kept getting promoted up, right? You want to meet that person, and you want to meet the person that everybody kind of likes. And find out some fun facts about these people, and send that new employee on a scavenger hunt where they have to ask around to figure out who that person is, and they get to truly connect and learn something about the people in the cubicles next to them so they're not so siloed out. So everybody at the end of the day can go home healthy and happy, just like a hospital. And we've all heard that quote that nobody's on their deathbed wishing that they had more time in the office. Except ego people. We all. Let's be honest, right? If you're spending more quality time, seriously though, think about this. If you're spending more quality time with your highest paying clients, or your lowest paying that you're trying to get to be your highest paying, then you are your family, or your spouse, or those people that mean something to you. Just think about what that's going to do to your happy factor. So I want you right now to close your eyes just a brief second here. Close your eyes, please, and think about the people close to you. Maybe the person that, per John O'Leary, says inspires you. And when was the last time you gave them any recognition? And I don't mean I love you. I love you is the three powerful words, but let me explain real quickly. There is a difference between saying I love you and I love the way you tilt your head back every time you laugh. Or I love the way that I'm freaking out about something, you can calm me down. So if they're not here with you today, you can open your eyes, thank you. If they're not here with you today, make that call. Not a text, this is very important, not a text, not an email, a physical tell them why you love them. And if you can't seem to find the words, go to a hospital hallway at 3 a.m. because I guarantee you those words will come. One of my clients as well, big burly executive guy, kind of intimidating, it's like all muscle. And I'm speaking and he's just sitting there like, I don't need you. Like, I don't even like you. You know, it's just like, kind of whatever. And I have him do this exercise, and of course he hates me. And he approaches me about 3 hours later. And he comes back in and he goes, Kaylin, can we talk outside? I'm like, okay, like, don't beat me up. And he takes me outside. And he goes, you know, my wife and I are in the middle of a divorce. And frankly, I could see why. It's not very nice. And and I was like, okay, tell me more, because you can't tell him that, like, you get it. And he goes, but in the middle of this, he goes, I realized a lot of my mistakes. He goes, so I called her, and I reminded her of our first date, and the chemistry we had, and I invited to take her to that same place tonight. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be moving back home. We're going to stop the paperwork, and I'm going to work on my marriage. He's been married 10 years now. Simple call. A simple reach out, and it's not the generic stuff that is not connection. Connecting is when you get past the simple things you do every day, and you get into the things that are uncomfortable to do. The way you admit you're wrong about something. That is connecting. Fourth principle of happiness is called vision or meaning. Do me a favor. Picture that goal you had. You know, the one that stimulates your soul, that gives you that experience, that makes you think, yes, this is what I want in my life. And now think about what it would mean if that goal was not so centered around you. And how you could make the world a better place, or your community a better place, or your family a better place because you reach it. There was a study done, Harvard Business Review, all my stuff is quoted from there, and a study done about people, MBA, students who graduate with their MBA degrees. And what they do is they tend to write down what they want their goal to be, because your brain essentially can't necessarily tell the difference between what you want and what you say you want if you visualize it clear enough and often enough. And they write down their goals, and what they found is that 10 years after writing down the goals, the 3% of people who did and visualized it out-earned the other 97% by actually 10 times. 10 times different. So get your vision, get your meaning, practice writing it down. Now, vision or meaning as it pertains to goals is one thing. But for you to have the ultimate happy factor in your life, the ultimate happiness, you need to understand that those 4 things, they're going to get you close. But they're not going to get you through the tough times. And there's 3 types of happiness you need to understand. Pleasure. Pleasure is the first one. Say it with me, pleasure. Just say it to your neighbor kind of creepily, freak them out. Pleasure. Okay, you guys like the creepy, that's what I just figured out. Okay, so pleasure is actually the type of happiness that comes from when my boyfriend gives me flowers in the hospital, okay? It's the shortest lasting, which, by the way, if Jeff's in here, that's why I need them all the time, not just in the hospital. It's the shortest lasting form of happiness. It fades relatively quickly. It's the happiness that I feel when the fresh air hits my lungs after being holed up for 6 weeks. It's the way you set your financial goals, and then you can buy that thing, that car, that money, that something. But again, it dies quickly. It's the shortest lasting. Second type of happiness is called passion or flow. And that's why when you get into the thing, you know, runner's high, you don't realize how much time has passed. You're just kind of in the zone. Some of you, when you go to work, you look up and it's 10 p.m. and you're like, crap, what happened? Great job, you're in passion, you're in flow. It's the second longest flow, second longest lasting. Flow is like, I mean, right now I'm in flow. I have no idea how long I've been on stage for, frankly. But I figure I've got like 2 hours left with you, so we're good. What's funny is, you guys are fun. So some of you looked like, yeah, this is great. Some of you like looked around like, I should leave. Thanks for that. But it is. It's that state of flow where you have no idea what is happening or what time things are happening. And the third type of happiness, by the way, don't panic. I know exactly how much time I have left. Third type of happiness is called passion. Is called purpose. Let's explain purpose. Why do I do what I do? Like, guys, I don't need to work. I could just be on disability. I was on it. It's fun. Like, you're just retired all day. You don't do much. But I'm like, no, let me get off disability and pay my own medical bills. Why do I do that? Because of purpose. Because I know by me helping somebody else, and by me setting up a side of my business to give money back to the patients and the families in hospitals, that suddenly it's not about me and I can get through any of the tough times. And I remember where I was yesterday. A guy came in, Darren Hardy, and I remember where I was when I quit my job. I was literally in the hospital bed, and I was at that point where I had no hope. No hope. I'm going to die. I need to file for disability. I've lost everything. Everything. I was in a new state. I didn't have any friends. My family wasn't around. There was no hope for me. And I was told I needed to make end-of-life arrangements. And one of the nurses came in and they dropped off the compound effect. And then they brought a Tony Robbins book. And I started reading, and I got so busy reading and changing everything I knew about the foundation of my life. And I learned that the impossible can become possible if you do the right things in the right order. And you study from people you want to be like, and you get coaches, and you learn, and you grow, and you get outside of yourself and into something else that's inspiring. Because when the bad days happen, when the terminal diagnoses happen, you can't get through it unless you can get out of it and see the world for what it is, unless you can tie your life to a bigger purpose. And some people, it's fine if your purpose is not to change the world. Totally cool. Change your family. Change your community. Lift those in your company up. Do something outside of yourself. And when you get through that, you can get through anything. A bad quarter, rejected deal, a few tough years, a terminal diagnosis. Purpose is the longest lasting form of happiness. One of my clients, the team, it's a very diverse team. It's an inside sales organization. We have people from 18 to 65 years old, all different nationalities. We've got white, we have African American, we've got a couple Latinas, and traditionally, especially in this day and age, they get along, but there's so many stories that they're coming in with, like, could we be friends with this person where we're not sure how it goes in the workplace? And we want all of this diversity, and it's a fantastic thing, but sometimes they're a little afraid to reach their hand out and introduce themselves. There's a Iranian and a Pakistani, and they're just afraid to be friends. They don't know each other enough. And so what we did is we had a meeting, and we gave everybody sticky notes. And we talked about our whys and our purpose and why our customers buy from us, and we figured out what our whys were. And it started off very, very interesting. And a lot of these people, they're not college educated. They haven't taken a substantive amount of personal development courses. And we make them write out on their sticky note what their why was. And a lot of them were like shoes. And one person wrote out so I could buy a bigger house. Okay, cool, that's great. Why a bigger house? Well, I just had a son. Nobody in the office even knew that guy just had a son. So they get the son, or he gets his son, he wants a bigger house. And we're like, well, why? What does that matter? What does it matter? And he goes, well, I want the house to be in a better school district. We're getting closer. Okay, you want a different school district. Cool, tell me more about that. Well, because I want my son to get into college because I never got to go to college. Well, what if your son wants to go to a really, expensive school? And he goes, then I'd be a better father if I could just pick up that tab and not worry about it. And suddenly the room felt a little less like strangers and a little more like heart. And what they did is they all put their sticky notes at the front of the board, and it was totally anonymous, and I read them all out loud, and they found out that they were all the same. All of their whys were very similar. And then we did the same thing with their customers. What do their customers really want when they buy? And just that center of purpose and why they were there changed the game. So you're doing your thing. Let's go back to this. You're doing your thing, okay? And you're controlling your thoughts. You've got progress. You're connecting. You've got a vision or meaning. You're doing the right types of happiness. And you understand the different components and the principles, and you're like, yeah, why is this not happening? I'm still not fulfilled. Here's the thing they don't tell you. You've got your pleasure, your passion, your purpose. And most people reach out jumping straight for their pleasure. I want to buy this thing. I want to do this thing. I want to experience this thing. And then once they get enough pleasures in life, then they're like, you know what, let me work on my passion a little bit more, and then let me work on my purpose. I can't work on my purpose until I've got everything else I need. but that's the not correct way to do it. Just like that's not the correct way to say the sentence. Here we are. Okay, so then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to flip it and work on purpose first. You're supposed to every morning think about the purpose you have and the type of impact you want to make on your life. And then what tends to happen is you find that focusing on your purpose gets you to your passion, gets you through those tough times. And then what happens is you can reward yourself with whatever you want to buy. But most people spend their entire lives flipping that switch. And you want to know what's worse than CF? I mean, so much worse. It's living a long life and not being happy or grateful or fulfilled. And if there's one truth I share with you today about my life and the things I've experienced, I'm legitimately fine if antibiotic resistance keeps happening. And my next hospitalization, I did leave through the morgue instead of the entrance. I've come to terms with that, guys. Because I know life isn't even about the number of breaths you take. It's about the number of moments you create that take your breath away. Similar to everybody else, I've got like 25 free books I'm giving out. So come find me, you get a free book. And then I've also got an infographic with all the statistics that I can send you guys. It's super simple. You text the word happy to 66866. There should be a slide up on it, but that's okay. Happy 66866. And if you have any questions, I've got your back. Thank you.
All right, everybody, grab very quickly your speaker evaluation forms. 30